Well, good to have you this morning. If you notice, we're in a different location. We're back in Phil and Lynn's home, and thankful to be here. Kind of like coming home again. And we are going to do as always. We're going to start current events, and next hour we're going to have on Benjamin Barak, probably one of the best prophecy end time teachers I've ever heard. He's sharing some information with us. But we're glad you're with us wherever you are around the country watching right now, and we won't be taking phone calls at least not the second hour because not at all, because we got a guest coming on. But I do want to start current events as I always do, and again, welcome to the broadcast today, and hope you'll be with us and you'll stay with us, and we can bless you with something. I want to start reading a verse out of Daniel chapter 8. I taught this one time several years ago on the end times with this prophecy in Daniel, and folks, this prophecy in Daniel 8:25. The one word in there that really, when I started studying into it, caught my attention and it showed me a 2-hour presentation on one word prophesied in the book of Daniel, chapter 8, verse 25. And when I understood the meaning of the word, when I took time to look it up in the concordance to see what it meant in the scriptures, it opened up a whole new world of understanding of how we're being deceived by the very prophecy that Daniel talked about in Daniel 8:25 in one word in that verse. Now I'm going to read it to you very quickly and get on the current events, but I want you to remember as I go through the current events, keep this verse in mind. It says, talk about the Antichrist and his forces, and through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand. And he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace, remember the word peace, shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. The end of this time for this Antichrist system is going to end, and it really is. But the word peace, when I was reading that first time to start teaching, I thought, well, the word peace just means simply, I figured that he would destroy many through keeping the peace in the world by his armies, the peacekeeping forces. That's what I thought we were talking about there. Look up the word peace. Look it up sometime in the concordance. You know what that means? False security and false prosperity. How are we living in a world of false security and false prosperity?
Yes.
Folks, we are living in a bubble that's going to blow up one day because of our naivete, our willful ignorance, whatever you want to call it. We have been deceived with this very prophecy Daniel talked about 4,000 years ago. Isn't it a coincidence how the Bible lines up?
Yeah.
It's amazing. But let's start current events and start with some good news. This is good news. Researchers developed a new miracle superglue that can heal potentially fatal wounds in seconds. Bullet shot, gunshot wounds, or knife cuts, whatever. It can actually sealed up in just a little bit of time. It's a superglue, stop the bleeding almost instantly. Now that is good news. Some extra news, y'all saw this probably. The world's smallest newborn baby survived 8.6 ounces. Smallest ever born. 8.6 ounces, about the size of an apple, as it said.
Long as head.
And this is what they want to murder every day. 23 weeks. 8 ounces, 8.6 ounces. Isn't that beautiful?
Wow.
And they want to murder them. They do murder them. Praise God for that. Now we know Louisiana just signed a law to stop murdering babies after they hear the heartbeat. They're going to stop killing babies. And Alabama, Missouri, almost shut down this last murder clinic. Come within a few days, the court order shut down. The court reversed it for 4 days. They're going to shut it down, not necessarily because of murdering babies, but because it was unclean, unkept, and the governor said we're not going to have that.
Well, Planned Parenthood fought hard to keep it
Sure,
open,
they did.
no
They're
matter
fighting
what.
hard right now.
That's something to say, being that filthy.
Do what now?
Being that filthy.
Sure.
That's something to say in and of itself.
Absolutely. Well, obviously, all these facilities are about that way, and they don't really care. And the movie Unplanned, I haven't seen that yet. I've seen the videos album, a copy of it. Said the movie Unplanned is causing abortion workers to leave their jobs.
Good.
Amen.
Amen to that. You see, there is a kickback in some areas, Phil. Steve. Praise God for that. There's some people standing up, and we're starting to see reversal on some things. Hallelujah for the victories.
Because their eyes are being opened.
Yes.
They're being hidden by the popular
Propaganda. And this I thought was a very telling picture. A little baby here stretching and says, "I made it. Democrats didn't get me."
Amen.
I like it.
And good news here, Roy Moore's going to run for Senate again, he thinks, even though Trump doesn't want him to. Now, why would Trump not want him to run for Senate? He's the strongest ally, Christian ally, I would say, we could have in office for years, and Trump don't want him to run. But he said, despite what Trump says, he's probably going to run for Senate again.
Trump's not a Christian.
No, he's not.
He says he fears that he's going to lose again to Doug Jones. That's what he says.
Well, I don't know.
That's
I really can't say what's going to happen with that,
excuse.
but I admire him for taking a stand again.
Yeah.
I would tend to think you might see a whiplash back, or whatever you call it.
Well,
Right.
Trump sold him out last time, you know that. And that's why he lost the election. If he lost, I think he may still won, they just kind of voted different. But in a way, some good news. It wasn't all bad. Less than 24 hours after 9-year-old Shailene Ryan learned the Hemlock maneuver at a kid's safety class, she used the technique to save her best friend's life. Shailene and Kara Sylvia were eating lunch at their elementary school in Northborough, Massachusetts, when Kara started to choke and her face turned blue. Shailene immediately sprang into action, wrapping her arms around Kara's waist and using her hands to repeatedly push up on her bestie's abdomen until Kara caught up a large piece of hot dog. She's awesome, said Kara, a really good friend.
Amen.
Amen.
I've used that maneuver myself a couple of times, on Marshall more than once, I think. But it does work.
Killed me.
Yeah, I figured better break a rib and they should suffocate. Only in America, Alabama Public Television, and I like this. Alabama's done some things right in the last little while. Alabama Public Television refused to air an episode of PBS animated children's show Arthur because it featured a same-sex wedding.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
Amen.
Yes.
The episode Mr. Ratburn and the Spatial Someone depicted the wedding of Mr. Ratburn, a rat, and Patrick and Aardvark. The APT's Mike McKenzie said that since parents weren't warned about the gay wedding, we thought it would be a violation of trust to broadcast the episode. And good for them. Good for them. And one of Trump's friends, and one of Alex Jones' friends also, is that we all knew Roger Stone. Good week for Roger Stone, still waiting trial in the Russia probe after a court granted him permission to judge the 2019 exotic dancer invitationals at the Pony, the strip club in Memphis. The former Trump advisor, who has portrayed himself in the past as libertine and swinger, needs to raise cash for his legal defense.
Boy.
Sad. And I like this. Harry Truman said this: "I never gave anybody hell. I just told the truth, and they thought it was hell."
Is that why they're fighting so hard against us now?
Yeah, really.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's one of the week. Another week here. Well, I mean, why did he crucify Christ? What did he do wrong? How did he sin? He told the truth. He was controversial, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And who did he make the maddest? It wasn't the sinners. Well, it was a sinner, but they were church members, right?
Well, Christ was also stepping on the Pharisees and Sadducees.
That's what I'm saying, church members, preachers.
Because they were so involved in the dark kingdom at that time.
Yeah. Only in America, in the city of Dunedin, Florida, as foreclosed on a retiree's home for failing to pay fines imposed for neglecting his lawn. You hear that? They foreclosed on his house because he didn't mow his lawn.
Well, you can neglect your children, but don't neglect your lawn.
Exactly.
Right.
Jim Ficken, 69, admits that the grass briefly grew beyond the allowed 10 inches while he was visiting his dying mother, was shocked when he was told the daily $500 fines added $29,833.50. Nobody should lose their homes for having up to tall grass, Ficken's lawyer says. Isn't that sad?
What state was this in?
Florida. Isn't that sad? Only in America, a San Francisco primary school teacher on sick leave with breast cancer has been forced to pay the wages of her substitute. A 1976 rule requires teachers to pay for their own substitutes after 10 days of sick leave, but a public outcry may spur action by lawmakers. Candidly, I think the times have changed, said Democrat Senator Connie Leva. So the teachers, going more than 6 days, had to pay for their own substitutes.
Oh, boy.
About 2.5 million women are sent to jail every year. In 1983, about 9% of all jail admissions were of women, but in 2016, it risen to 23%. That is sad. But with a decaying society, jails prosper, don't they? And this is a sad statement on our nation. we now import far more than we export.
Yep.
America in the 50s, I remember talking about in school, grade school, Monterville, America fed the world.
That's all we
They
do.
did. We fed ourselves in the world. The U.S. flour industry generates $26 billion annually, but 80% of the cut flour sold in America are imported, including the ones in the White House.
That's ridiculous.
We can't grow in flowers.
Ross Perot really said it right.
Yes, he
You
did.
hear that second sound.
Now this will tie in. I think I'm going to save this till later on. I already read an article, but that's it. Wrap it up. Anyway, Evan Horowitz wrote this article. Said people are getting dumber, and that's not a judgment. It's a global fact. And he hosts of leading nations, IQ scores have started to decline. Though there are legitimate questions about the relationship between IQ and intelligence, and broad recognition that success depends as much on other virtues like grit, IQ test is used throughout the world today really seem to capture something meaningful and durable. Decades of research has shown that individual IQ scores predict things such as educational achievement and longevity. More broadly, the average IQ score of a country is linked to economic growth and scientific innovation. So, Charlie Disney got it right. The deliberate dumbing down of the Americans of America. The IQ is actually dropping. And
You can tell that when you go to the store and computers don't work.
there you go. Yeah.
You can tell that when they can't do this anymore because we only need more broadband to lower us down to the lowest demeanor.
And this proves it even more. Young people blame climate change for not preparing for retirement.
Not everything.
Many young people today think the civilization may not exist when they're of retirement age. Here are ways to get them to the best for the future anyway. Lori Rodriguez, a 27-year-old communications professional in New York City, is not saving for retirement. It isn't necessarily because she can't afford to, because she doesn't expect it will matter. Now, how's that for an excuse not to plan for the future, man? The world's going to end anyway.
Well, that's just as bad as rapitis.
It is. But that just proves the IQ not only sound nasty, but something's wrong.
One thing I've been noticing recently, it's a two-pronged attack. They got their climate change, but they want you to believe that so that they have a reason. I don't know how to describe it best, but a reason to like counter it. So then there's two reasons over here for them, and then the normal.
Right,
thing.
right.
There is no climate change. So they got two things working. So they can break it into thirds, two for them, one for normals.
Propaganda has been fed.
Well, that propaganda, yeah.
And you all know, you've heard of China's social credit scores,
Yep.
okay? Uber going to start banning passengers with low ratings.
Yeah.
I don't get into all this detail here, but if your ratings are 4.6 or low or below, you're at risk of being kicked. They don't want to pick you up. They stand by the curb. Uber's going to cut you off if you're not polite and whatever with the drivers. They're going to give you a social rating, so to speak, and they won't give you a ride anymore.
They bum you down. Dumb you down.
Now, think about that.
Yeah. You're being
I mean, it's amazing.
restricted from.
It's amazing. And Comcast is working on an in-home device to track people's health. Vic mentioned this a long time ago. Comcast is working on an in-home device which with a focus on health monitoring. The device will begin pilot testing this year, and the intention is to roll it out next year. Comcast is already in talks with hospitals about taking on shared savings if it can keep people from expensive emergency room visits. Think about that. A team under Summit Nagpal, a senior vice president and general manager of health innovation at Comcast, who previously worked at the consulting firm Accenture, has been working on the device for more than a year, according to two people with the direct knowledge. Nagpal joined Comcast in February this year, according to LinkedIn, to build a strategy and team for bringing the new health hardware market. Do you think that could be used to monitor us and tell us, hey, because you eat a piece of cake and you're a diabetic, you won't get any more help with us? Or, I mean, just think where that could lead to.
Sort of like a smart meter in the house.
Exactly.
You can go to the grocery store and stock up on candy bars and pop, then that goes back to that little card that you show for your discounts, which is going to go to the government and to the people that pay for your medical bill.
And Amazon's working on a device that can read human emotions. Amazon.com Incorporated developed a voice-activated wearable device that can recognize human emotion. The wrist-worn gadget is described as a health and wellness product in internal documents reviewed by Bloomberg. It's a collaboration between Lab 126, the hardware development group behind Amazon's Fire Phone and Echo smart speaker, and the Alexa voice software team. Designed to work with a smartphone app, the device has microphones paired with software that can discern the wearer's emotional state from the sound of his or her voice, according to the documents and a person familiar with the program. Eventually, the technology could be able to advise the wearer how to interact more effectively with others, the documents show.
Huh.
Phil, this is Mark the Beast technology, is it not?
Yeah, we're, it's like being in a train tunnel and the lights come
Yeah, it is.
and the whistle's blowing.
I got an article the other day, Butch, from a man that
One
I'm
good
going to try to
EMP
interview.
attack and
And he was
it's all
talking
done.
about, he sent the article, I said,
Wouldn't mind
the
one.
new
Now,
digital
me
currency. He
neither.
deals with
Every
gold
time
and
I see
silver.
people on their
But
cell
he said,
phones
here's the
all
new
time,
digital
I say,
currency.
"Oh, I can't wait till
Everything
they
with the
die."
cell phone.
Oh, yeah.
He said the market piece is not the chip going. It's something,
No, that's,
but
no.
it's everything to do with facial feature.
Yep.
The cell phone is going to be the digital currency of the future. We will see no gold, no silver, no
Biometrics.
fiat currency. Everything will be digital credits.
Well, I was in Colorado. I saw checks being deposited in accounts with cell phone.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew it was possible. Never saw it happen before.
Yeah.
But they just, whatever, scan
Take
it.
a picture of it and send it.
It's there.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Now, I will tell you this and gotta move on. Getting off the airport, go flying in Denver. And by the way, I'll share later on. I'm gonna share Monday night. Going through an airport is like going through a prison.
Denver,
It truly is. But anyway, we got off the airport, walked downstairs to the baggage claim area. Looked up ahead of me, and there's a lady there in a brown dress. Gosh, she's 6'3" or 4", big woman. Wow, that's a big lady. Walked around front, and there's a man with a beard.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm serious. I'm serious. I wish I got a picture of it, but I didn't. I said. Police to use TSA style scanners to spy on people in public places, in ball games, schools, restaurants. We told you about this years ago. TSA has, as you know, after you go through TSA scanners, they have X-ray. Will look under your clothes. I'm serious. So it's called Z-backer scanners, and they're going to use it it's also something called hex ray to spy on people in public places. They'll be able to see under your clothing a gun or whatever it may be. But now listen to this. Now this will be in public places. This will be in stores, like Walmart, perhaps different places soon. But guess what the name of the company is that developed this, Phil?
What?
The name of the company that developed this is called Liberty Defense.
Oh,
They called it double speak.
Yeah, exactly. Patriot Act 1, remember Patriot Act 1 to go, Liberty Defense is making scanners that scan you where you go. Isn't that wonderful?
I don't know.
Now, again, I mentioned this many times, the movie Minority Report. If you haven't seen it, watch it.
I need to.
Pre-crime is here. Law enforcement's new TAP system predicts if you pose a future threat. It has been nearly 2 years since I reported on dangers of creating a law enforcement run mental health assessment program. In Texas now, police use MHAs to screen every person they have arrested for mental illness. But the TAPS Act, first introduced in January, would take law enforcement screenings to a whole new level and create a national threat assessment of every child and adult. Hear that? In the course of 6 months, the Threat Assessment Prevention and Safety Act, or TAPS Act, H.R. 838, has seen support of the bill grow to nearly 8 congressmen already. Sorry, in Congress. Politicians and our master manipulators. What better way to garner public support for a national threat assessment program than to introduce it during National Police Week?
Mm-hmm.
Folks, this is for real stuff. It's here. It's not 20 years from now. It's here now. This is Mark the Beast technology. The Beast can't be everywhere at once, but his devices and people can.
Would you say that goes as far as that if they feel that even though you didn't commit a crime, that you have the potential that... I remember seeing something on a movie where...
Yeah, the Minority Report.
Yeah, but back in the 50s,
Oh.
I think it was 40s and 50s, where they were deciding, men and women, if they could be fertile or sterile.
Oh, yeah.
And I wonder if that's, push it to that level.
And what was that show where they eat people to live longer?
Silent Green.
Soy and green. Soy and green.
Green.
Yeah. I mean, they actually, and they started running out of it. People started rioting, but they wanted more of it. I mean, this is, of course, all mind power. And Phil's reading 2 books right now about that. It shows how this works, folks. The wickedness of this world and the people that are behind it know how to manipulate us where they want to go, don't they? And we do it because we don't want to cause them problems.
It's always been.
Get along, get along.
Get along, get along.
Disney to pull out of states that make laws against abortion.
Good article.
This is not rumor or joke. It's from the Hollywood Reporter. Bob Iger said it would be very difficult for Disney to keep filming in Georgia if the state enacted a new abortion law. In an interview with Reuters, the CEO of the Walt Disney Company said he had doubts the company would continue production in Georgia if the controversial ban on abortion in the state comes into effect, primarily as the company's employees will be against it. I think many people who work for us will not want to work there, and we will have to heed their wishes in that regard. Right now, we are watching it very carefully, Iger told reporters. The exec added that the law does come into effect. He didn't see how it's practical for us to continue to shoot there. Disney's prospective withdrawal from production in Georgia would be a huge blow to the state. Recently, Disney's Marvel Studios filmed a portion of both Black Panther and the Avengers Endgame in Georgia. Who cares?
Yeah.
Let them go somewhere else.
I don't watch movies.
But Hollywood's blow to Georgia do you think it'll be more severe than God's blow to this nation?
Nope.
Think about it.
Or to that state.
Exactly.
Nice rebound.
I think the governor said he don't care.
No, they don't care what you know. No,
I mean, let them go somewhere else.
exactly. Get out of here. That's fine with me.
Rise again and all these little.
Trump said, "I have no problem with a sodomite married to another man running for office."
Yeah.
That's our godly president.
Yeah.
And in that one line is exactly what is wrong with America and those who represent the people nowadays. They not only know the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. Romans 1:32. It's apparently the position of President Donald Trump when asked how Sodomite Mayor Pete Buttigieg, that's what I call him, his name is, running for the White House. I think it's absolutely fine. I do. I think it's great. I think it's something that perhaps some people may have a problem with. I have no problem whatsoever. I think it's good, Trump told Steve Hilton, host of Fox News, The Next Revolution. In the interview that will air on Sunday at 9 p.m. The fact that Trump not only said he thinks it's absolutely fine, but Hilton said it is normal for a man to have a husband.
And you know, when that bill,
He's not wishy-washy, he just doesn't care.
No, he doesn't care.
Anything anybody wants, because I'm keeping off.
Now this is the next step of
Those deals.
devolution for a country, and it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Could prostitution be next to be decriminalized? Of course.
Yes.
A demonstrator that says picture of a woman in New York City marching outside City Hall, a prostitute asking for equal rights to work as a prostitute, make money, get rid of pimps, and be a licensed prostitute. This is out of Albany. Marijuana has gone mainstream. By the way, out in Colorado, you can buy marijuana in a service station. Has gone mainstream. Casino gambling is everywhere, and sports wagering is spreading. Could prostitution be next? Lawmakers across the country are beginning to reconsider how to handle prostitution, as calls for decriminalization are slowly gaining momentum. Did you hear that? Sodomy started out slowly. Abortion started out slowly. Now look where it is today. Now look at this. And of course, it'll bring more tax revenue for the states, won't it? Think about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Decriminalization bills have been introduced in Maine and Massachusetts. A Senate bill is expected to be introduced in the City Council of Washington, D.C. in June. And lawmakers in Rhode Island held hearings last month on a proposal to study the impact of decriminalizing prostitution.
Well, they had it in Germany when I was there in the service. It was legalized.
Can we also say that we can see Sodom and Gomorrah in America?
oh, it's already here.
Yeah.
Phil, you're almost old as I am. Would you believe this 40 years ago? 30 years ago even.
Oh, it was here, but it's just been dressed up and packaged differently.
And 8 Republicans voted with the Democrats in the House. The vote was 236 to 173 for the Equality Act, which will make all people give homosexuals, sodomites, any sexual orientation, and gender identity access as 1964 civil rights did for all colors, let's say all blacks and whites. or whatever race. But if this becomes law, it passed the House. They don't think it passed Senate yet, but it will eventually. It will make churches hire homosexuals. And why would churches have to? Because they're not churches. They're corporations. Am I right?
The 501c3.
And again, if you're a corporation, the government gets a right to tell you who get to hire and fire. That's a fact. I'm not making it up. But here it is. It passed the House. This is how wicked America has become. Once you give something like this any kind of credence at all, you've lost.
Yep.
You understand?
The Special Rights Act.
I got a feeling that as the 788, the Senate is going to pass and Trump will sign it into law.
Now, I want to read an article to you that I want to. Well, I'm going to do these first, and I'll read the article to you. Harvard holds undocu graduation ceremony for illegal aliens. Undocu graduation. When did we suddenly start celebrating illegal aliens like it was some kind of race or religion? Mm-hmm. To be an undocumented immigrant means that you are in the country illegally, i.e. not complying with our nation's immigration laws. It's not something to be proud of. Of course it is. How dare he judge? It's not like your nation of origin or your religion or color of skin, something you can celebrate and be proud of and demand equal rights. But Harvard holds an undocumented graduation ceremony, especially for illegal aliens. I mean, this all kind of together for articles. So.
Mhm.
That's supposed to be signed intelligent.
Should the electoral college be eliminated? 15 states are trying to do with electoral college. And electoral college, folks, is only meant to make states more equal in elections. Am I right, Phil?
Yes.
Smaller states be overridden without that.
Right, it's states' rights. It's
Sure.
You know, the people really should be only citizens of their state,
Yeah.
and then the states should tell the federal government what to do, not the other way around.
Exactly.
But they're going to try to do it with the electoral college. Nevada governor vetoes that in the state. It passed the House. Nevada Governor Steve Sisolak vetoed the National Popular Vote Interstate Capital Compact bill sent to him by the legislature earlier this month. This is surprising, wonderful news from Blue State. In the statement, he said the NPV compact would diminish the role of smaller states like Nevada. National popular vote would be do exactly as the governor fears. A few big cities, not even states, would essentially rule the United States. That's true. Now stop and think. If this would become law, and they would do away with the electoral votes, they got illegals in here to vote.
Right.
What would that mean for those of us who see these things? Now this article was written by Steve Hodges. I'm going to share it as the last thing to do today because I think it's very important. The fall of New Mexico. By the time your state wakes up, it'll be too late. This is pretty well written. I first reported on New Mexico's governor, Michelle Lujan Grisham, 3 months ago. Since that time, the safety and the security of the people in Mexico has significantly worsened. She is unquestionably a liberal's liberal and supports the demise of the Constitution and the destruction of American culture by replacing it with a borderless social utopia based upon strong communistic principles. She's also closely adhering to rules for radicals as she attempts to create an atmosphere where the takeover of the United States can be completed by overwhelming the border beyond the government's ability to respond to the crisis. This so-called governor has prevented the defense of her constituents' property rights. Towns like Deming are overrun with illegal aliens, and they are being housed in an overflow situation in places like Deming. According to Deming City Administrator Aaron Serra, now pay attention now because this is important. This is not a coincidence. This is a planned destruction of America. They're destroying the Christian culture in America, and I should say the Caucasian Christian culture. Am I telling the truth?
Yeah.
As I said, next year, 2019, there'll be less white children in America than there are other ethnics, groups. I mean, that's just a fact. They're destroying American Christian culture that was founded by white Europeans. I don't care if you get mad or not. I don't care. I'm telling the truth. They want to undermine what's left of this country to the point that what morals are left will be taken away. And your ability to say anything will be taken away. Now, according to Deming City Administrator Aaron Serra in Luna County, buses unload, now listen, between 300 and 500 immigrants each day. As a town of 14,183, it has been mercilessly overwhelmed by governors in a dangerous game of partisan politics. Even larger enclaves, such as Las Cruces, have been overrun with illegal aliens, completely depleting community and local government's resources as they're forced to house and care for 6,000 asylum workers. I received the following. He said, Dave said, I got this from the following citizen in Deming, New Mexico. He said, Dear Dave, I don't know where to turn. Our town of about 15,000 people is being overrun. These people are not just immigrants looking for work. I have seen MS-13, and you can tell who they are by their facial tattoos. Our governor is forcing our people to take on these people. One police officer told me that we are getting 300 immigrants per day. Soon the immigrants will outnumber the Americans who live here. Is that the plan? Of course it is. I'm afraid to let the kids play outside. I don't know who these people are and what they might do. What can I do? Thanks, Jose. In Sierra County, the population 11,116 and 21% poverty rate. Sierra County alone, with Arturo and Lincoln counties, have passed resolutions opposing the relocation of migrants to their communities. Luzanne Grisham is aiding and abetting major threats to national security in her state. The social charities in Mexico have long dried up. 2 weeks ago, the Denver Post reported that Luzanne Grisham's office paid $4,000 in taxpayer funds to various local charities in Denver. In Denver now, they're moving them out to Denver because they ran out of room in New Mexico. Oh, that's just coincidence. Anyway, to house thousands of immigrants that cannot be housed in New Mexico, as the shelters in several New Mexico towns and cities are filled beyond capacity. Earlier this spring, the governor sent in law enforcement to disarm and arrest border citizens who had gathered to defend themselves against the onslaught of immigrants. You hear that? She went in and arrested her own people who were trying to defend the border. She kicked the National Guard off the border, citing the Pelosi line that the border was a non-event. The Border Patrol hates this woman with a passion, and so do a growing number of people in the state. Now, 31 of 33 New Mexico's counties are up in arms over the betrayal they have experienced at this hands of Governor Lucian Grisham. This is being expressed through resolutions. The governor is now asking President Trump and the Department of Homeland Security for their help. The governor wants to continue to urge the federal government to increase its personnel on the border. Amazingly, the governor is asking DHS for reimbursement for the cost of handling the immigrants, and she won't let them in. Now, people in New Mexico have awakened. However, it is too late. They are now in damage control mode because they have been overrun. By the time your state wakes up, it will also be too late. Folks, once you're on the defense, it's hard to get back on offense.
Yeah, there's no money
There's no money, yeah. So
to even make a.
understand that this is not coincidence. They want to change the popular vote, want to do all these things, and now we have Harvard giving undocumented immigrants their own special graduation party. This is a plan to destroy America. Mm-hmm. It's been going on longer than we've been alive, but it's picked up momentum because it's gaining strength.
Right.
Okay, and the influence of this movement is gaining, and some people are starting to kick back and see it, but it's like throwing water on the house when the fire's out and the house has been burned. You know, it's a little bit late, but at least you're seeing it. So, can you see a correlation between Daniel 8:25, false security, and false prosperity?
Yeah.
And in this country, look around. We all have pretty nice homes. We're driving a car or two. We look like we're really wealthy. It's all built on facade. It's built on fiat currencies. It's built on welfare systems. It's going to collapse. It looks good for a while. Like building a house without foundation. It'll look good for a while, but come the first little rain, guess what happens to your home? Same things happen with the nation.
Political correctness is destroying our history.
Of course, it is. It is.
Civil War and all.
And
There
the welfare
is-
system for votes, it couldn't afford itself, and they took it right to the limit, and then they started letting in aliens.
Oh yeah.
Just tipped it way up.
Yep.
So you know, we're here, but we don't know it.
We are. Yes, we are. What
There
you
is
say?
scripture somewhere where it says how the alien's gonna come in, but the system eventually is gonna collapse. And they're gonna look around and say there's nothing here left for us, and they're gonna go back to their own countries.
In Venezuela, it's so bad economically that the criminals said there's no point robbing people. There's nothing to steal. I'm serious.
Yeah.
They said the bullets are $1 a piece, and they're complaining because if they empty a magazine, it costs $15. You know, but that it's so bad in Venezuela that the criminals can't make a living down there anymore. Now we're laughing, but it's not really funny. But you know, what I'm saying, this is what you're saying.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to bleed a body so long before you drain it out.
Right.
Phil, you want to say anything before you go to your videos?
Yeah. You remember we watched some clips by a man by the name of Sheldrake. He was a scientist, and he said that a lot of the, actually he said the 10 basic fundamental tenets that underlie all science appear to be wrong. Okay, in other words, science is not honest.
Right.
Okay, and then we had a professor of psychology up in Canada, or no, it was in Norway, or one of those Norwegian countries, and he was showing how the idea of this social engineering really doesn't even make sense. It can't work. It can't work. It's backwards. So the clip I'm going to show today is interesting because it's the scientist Sheldrake who is being interviewed about Peterson, Jordan Peterson, the psychologist. And I've broken this up into, I think, 6 or 7 clips. It's very revealing, again, it's just, there's some good information here. It definitely make you think. Both men are right in their own spheres, and so it's going to be very interesting. It'll take me just a second here to switch to the video, but it's about 17 minutes long. So anyway, that's what the clips are going to be about.
All right, folks, after this segment, we're going to come back next hour with our guest, Benjamin Barak, and a lot to talk about with him. So y'all hang in there and watch this clip with us.
Rupert Sheldrake is a rebel, a spiritual scientist who's been having these debates for a long time. What does he make of it? When did you first become aware of Jordan Peterson, and what was your initial reaction?
I think I first became aware when people started telling me, here's this guy who's suddenly burst onto the public scene, and check out some of his YouTubes. So I looked at some of them, and I was actually very surprised. Here's somebody talking in a very sophisticated, intelligent way who seems to be pro-God, which is very unusual in these days, and knew a lot about Jung and was clearly an intellectual and clearly able to stand up for himself in conversation with people with different points of view. So I was impressed. Here's somebody who's really raising the level of public debate.
He seems to be arguing for very similar things to the conversations that you've probably been having for a good few decades now, particularly the reality of religious experience and the irreducibility of it to a sort of materialist paradigm. Would you say that was why you connected with him?
Well, I think I connected with him to start with because he was, first of all, taking the Christian story seriously. Normally, people who are interested in spirituality, it's sort of Buddhism light or shamanism or something like that. I mean, it usually follows the principle ABC, anything but Christian. And he was rather unfashionably talking about Bible stories in a very interesting way. And taking seriously spiritual experience. I mean, it wouldn't be true to say that materialists don't necessarily take it seriously. I mean, Sam Harris, after all, is a meditator, and so is Susan Blackmore, and they're both committed atheists. So there are quite a lot of people who now practice spiritual practices. That's the theme of my most recent book, Science and Spiritual Practices, who would argue that what's going on is all inside the brain. Now, I don't agree with that, but nevertheless, there are some materialists and atheists who do agree that spiritual practices work and confer important experiences, but without connecting it to any religious tradition. So, I suppose that the key questions really are not so much the origins of morality. I mean, I think morality has origins in human social nature, and all social organisation, as I said before, is it involves cooperation between members of the group. There have to be sanctions on people's or animals' behaviour if they want to remain part of the group. So I don't think it necessarily depends on a divine sanction. And I think it's perfectly natural and normal for human beings to look after their young and to fight to defend them. I mean, after all, mother bears defend their cubs, and, all sorts of animals defend and protect their young and members of their group. I think where the particular form of morality that is the object of this discussion comes in is where it goes beyond the social group. It's natural and normal for animals and humans to protect their young, to be prepared to work hard to bring up their young. It's deeply instinctive to fight to protect them or their immediate social group. Where the human rights things becomes more interesting and where the Christian message becomes more radical is where it goes beyond your own group to helping other groups. That's not natural in most social groups. You fight for your tribe, you fight for the good of your family, you help your kids and you help your relatives. But why should you care about somebody from some other group who you've traditionally been at enmity with, or someone you've never heard of the other side of the world? What business is it of yours? The idea that you're connected with a consciousness far greater than your own and far greater than all of humanity gives you some motive for reaching out beyond the obligations of family and social duty to your own group. That's the bit where the mystical experience of a connection with something much greater than yourself gives a motive for this selfless behavior. Secular humanism, you see, which doesn't base it on that kind of, the love of God, transmits it to the love of humanity because it turns humanity into God, as it were. Love humanity. But as a command, it's something you ought to do. Well, it's a kind of duty. Yes, you ought to do this, you ought to have this duty. But it's not as powerful, persuasive, or as effective as a mystical sense of connection, which gives you a much stronger motivation if you feel you really are connected to something deeper and greater than yourself.
And I don't know if you agree with this, but I also think that it's quite dangerous. You have on one side the sort of Dawkins types that are sort of saying we're the bright, we're the intelligent ones, all the religious people are not only wrong but dangerous in their beliefs. And we hold up this idea of secular humanism, and whereas I think most people listening to a very materialist worldview would put two and two together and say, well, I might as well just take what I can for myself. I don't see a way out of complete selfishness, and I wonder what impact that has on the world. The sort of the rampant materialism that we see in our culture, and how much of it is being fed by these kind of anti-spiritual worldviews.
Well, I think quite a lot of it's fed by anti-spiritual worldviews. I mean, after all, in ordinary parlance, people use the word materialistic to refer to people who like going to shopping malls and buying lots of things, who are obsessed with money. I mean, philosophically speaking, it's this doctrine that matter's the only reality, but the two are clearly linked. I mean, one can't pretend that in the past there were, humans weren't greedy. There were plenty of greedy people at all times, but in past civilizations, greed and avarice were seen as deadly sins, not as admirable qualities that make the economy grow. So there were countervailing forces in traditional societies. So I think that the main danger of materialism is that it gives people a false view of themselves and the reality in which they live. It's extremely isolating. It treats individuals as nothing but the activity of their brains. The mind is what the brain does, is a materialist slogan. If I'm nothing but the activity of my brain, and if societies are nothing but individuals interacting through enlightened self-interest or whatever Enlightenment philosophy of it is, I mean, that's one of the bases of the enlightened self-interest idea. I don't want you to steal my things. You don't want people to steal your things, so together we'll gang together and stop other people stealing things. This is one of Dillahunty's points. Well, no doubt that's true up to a point. But if it's just isolated individuals, if there's no sense of connection to the universe, to nature, to what lies under nature, the conscious ground of reality or God, if there's no sense of any of those connections, and if we live, as materialist science tells us, in a purposeless universe where we are here as a result of blind chance in mutations and unconscious natural selection forces, then it's a pretty depressing worldview. And the result of this is that in secular societies, the endemic mental condition or mental problem is depression on a massive scale. Vast proportions of the population on antidepressant pills, lots of suicide even among children. It's a depressing worldview, and I think it can lead to this rampant destruction of the environment. I think that is a kind of spin-off from it. But I wouldn't like to...
Because you disenchant the natural world, and then why bother protecting it?
Yes. I wouldn't like to say, though, that it's only atheists and materialists who do that. Look at the United States. It's much more religious than Europe. And yet, America leads the world in wasteful consumerism. In fact, it sets the kind of gold standard for the world in terms of wasteful consumerism. And a lot of these people are actually religious believers. So I wouldn't want to overstate the case. But I think there is something about the Protestant Reformation that disenchanted the world even before the scientific mechanistic revolution in the 17th century disenchanted it further. But the ground was already prepared by the Reformation, which was on the whole a process of disenchantment of nature, withdrawal of God from nature, and a focus of religion into the relationship between humans and God, leaving nature out of it, whereas most traditional religions, including Orthodox and Catholic forms of Christianity, have included sacred places, sacred times, festivals, pilgrimages, the sense that the natural world is a reflection of the divine being. And what makes atheists interesting in this debate is that their stance is almost entirely to do with the Judeo-Christian tradition. What John Gray says, it's basically a Christian heresy. It's basically rooted in Christianity, shares many of the same assumptions, and is part of a wider Christian debate.
They don't like it when you point that out, though.
Well, historically speaking, they can't really deny it. So I do think it's a very interesting period that we're in, and I think that some atheists like Susan Blackmore and Sam Harris, who have taken up spiritual practices, are really where the cutting edge of this debate is at the moment. Old school atheists like Daniel Dennett and Richard Dawkins, who just dismiss the whole lot, are not really part of what's going on now. That's an old intellectual, polemical stance. It's basically 19th century point of view that they're representing that doesn't take into account the psychedelic revolution, the growth of yoga and meditation, the opening to Eastern traditions, the influence of the Dalai Lama, and all that kind of thing.
Do you sense that someone like Sam Harris is on more of a journey, is more open-minded than Dawkins, for example?
Yes. I think he's more open-minded than Dawkins, but he's still got this extreme anger against anything to do with religion. And he treats religion with contempt. And I think it's just bad manners. For example, in his book, Waking Up, where he's talking about meditation practices, he said, our job is to steal the diamond of spiritual practice from the dunghill of religion. Now, he's learned from an enlightened Tibetan master in the Dzogchen tradition. He's been initiated. I find that incredibly disrespectful for someone who's a teacher at a very deep and fundamental level, to call what they believe a dung heap, and instead of saying, we're going to learn from these traditions and give thanks to the people who've taught us, that seems to me more appropriate than stealing and treating with contempt. A lot of atheism is extremely naive. I mean, it's based on a few cliches and a kind of emotional rejection of everything to do with religion. I mean, some is more sophisticated, obviously. There are some people who have a deeper understanding, and there are some people who become atheists having had a thorough grounding in Christianity or Judaism. It's an interesting fact that of all religions, Christianity is the one that most easily leads to atheism. Most atheists in the world today are from Christian backgrounds. You don't often meet Muslim atheists or Hindu atheists or Buddhist atheists. And you can meet Buddhists who claim that Buddhism itself is atheistic. I mean, it's an arguable case, but arguably, though, as John Gray, the philosopher John Gray, argues that atheism in its most common forms is actually very similar to Christianity. It's a kind of religion in itself. It's mainly brought about by taking over the framework of morality of Christianity, which becomes the morality of secular humanism, and taking over the Christian view of God, but instead of believing in God, believing in humanity. So humanity becomes a substitute for God, and many of the things that were worshipped about God are now worshipped about humans. This is something that Yuval Noah Harari brings out very clearly in his best-selling books. In Homo Deus, he makes it very clear that the modern world is dominated by this religion of humanity, which has its good points as well as its bad points. One of its good points is the emphasis on human rights, which derives from the Judeo-Christian tradition. The idea that everybody is equal in the sight of God gives rise ultimately to the idea of human rights. Ancient civilizations didn't have that idea. Ancient Greeks and Romans were slave owners, and so were Jews in the Old Testament. And indeed, many Christians were in the 18th century. You know, the slave trade and the slave plantations in the Caribbean and in what's now the United States were mainly run by believing Christians. On the other hand, the abolition of the slave trade and the abolition of slavery was also driven by Christians, largely Protestants, noticeably Quakers. Anyway, this human rights thing, which is so big in the modern world, is grounded in this tradition and takes over these assumptions from Christianity. If they were challenged, it would be hard, I think, for many humanists to defend them, because apart from saying we think people ought to behave as if everyone has equal value, etc., you could easily, I think, have a reaction against this liberal attitude and say, well, why should we treat everyone as equal? And people never used to. In India, there was a whole religion based on a caste system which didn't treat everyone as of equal value. It's not part of human nature to treat everyone as equal value.